Hello and Assalamu alaikum. I am Kashif Kamran and I welcome you to the Advanced Audit and Assurance Practice to Pass webinar being organized by ACCA Pakistan for March 2020 exam. And today is the first day of this webinar. Now, just before I start on with the proceedings of this Practice to Pass webinar for March 2020 exams, I would first like to formally introduce myself. In terms of my tutor profile, I am Kashif Kamran, a fellow chartered certified accountant. I am teaching the ACCA qualification for over 13 years now. My core specialization of teaching is the audit paper, both the audit and assurance paper and the advanced audit and assurance paper and the strategic business leader paper. I am currently associated with the Tabani School of Accountancy, which is a platinum approved learning provider of ACCA in Karachi, Pakistan. This is my ninth Advanced Audit and Assurance Practice to Pass webinar I am conducting on behalf of ACCA Pakistan to facilitate students, the AAA students, to assure that they pass their exams. Many of my students have attained nationwide positions in Pakistan and beyond in last many exam settings. And I'm also a registered mentor for Oxford Brookes University Research Project. So this is my brief tutor profile, and I'll be starting on with the day one proceedings now for the Advanced Audit and Assurance Practice to Pass webinar. How can you reach me? Over the next 5 days and after this session comes to an end, you can follow me on my YouTube channel. You can see the hyperlink of my YouTube channel. You can follow me on my Facebook page, which is a dedicated Facebook page for AAA, where you can get all the updates about the advanced audit insurance, all the tips, all the techniques, which can help you pass the AAA paper. So you can actively follow my Facebook page, which is the AAA by Kashif Kamran. You can follow my YouTube channel, which is itself Kashif Kamran, and you can join my student groups, the WhatsApp student groups. You will be getting the link of the WhatsApp group during the course of the webinar today. So you can join the WhatsApp group so that you can interact with other students who are giving the March 2020 exam. If you have any specific query, you can email me at my email ID kashifkamran@gmail.com. So this is the social interactions you can do with me over the next 5 days and after this webinar comes to an end. Okay, now to the agenda. Practice to pass, how it will work for you. You need to understand there are two very important elements here. One is practice, one is pass, and they both have a correlation. And you need to understand this correlation very effectively in order to get the objective of this session today and over the next 5 days. Now, when we speak of this term practice to pass, there is an element of practice. And in terms of the element of practice, the very first thing when you are practicing the past papers for advanced audit and assurance, you should first be assured that you have read the examiner mindset. If you are attempting past papers in the absence of the examiner mindset, you are not having a quality practice which will enable you to pass. So if you want to have a practice which will enable you to pass, a very important thing is that you read the examiner mindset. And over the day today, I will help you read the examiner mindset, because in the absence of the examiner mindset, in the absence of what the examiner expects from you, and you keep practicing 5 papers, 7 papers, 10 papers, you might be practicing a lot, but you're not practicing quality. Until the time you're not practicing quality, you cannot be passed, you cannot be successful in the AAA exams. So over my 3-hour sessions today, I will make you realize how important it is to read the examiner mindset, because eventually that will help you to do a very better practice. And that practice will eventually help you to be successful. Secondly, when you are practicing, you should practice with the examiner mindset. Secondly, you should practice adequate. Now, what is the definition of an adequate practice? The definition of an adequate practice is number one, recent papers, and number two, core areas. If you are doing adequate practice, you should make a habit that for the March 2020 exams, you need to do the recent papers. Recent papers 2019, recent papers 2018, recent papers 2017, and perhaps 2016. These are recent papers. You need to get involved in these recent papers. 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. You need to see what is happening in recent papers. You need to see what sort of things the examiner is giving in the recent paper. You need to see what sort of cases the examiner is giving in the recent papers. So you need to become habitual of the recent papers before you enter the March 2020 exams. So adequate practice, recent papers, and core areas. You need to practice the core areas a lot. You need to practice the areas which makes the 100 marks paper. You know the core areas, and I'll be shedding light on these core areas as I progress later into the day one. That you need to practice areas of risk. You need to practice areas of ethical and professional issues. You need to practice areas of evidence. You need to practice areas of procedures. You need to practice areas of reporting, and you need to practice areas of other assignments. These are fundamental areas, right? You cannot just go into the exam hall with less practice of procedures, evidence, risk, reporting, other assignments, ethical and professional issues. So first of all, when you are practicing, you need to make a habit that you are practicing with the examiner mindset. And that is what I need to develop today. That is what I will be developing over the next 3 hours, that you exactly know the examiner mindset before I take you to the practice. So on the day 2, on the day 3, on the day 4, and on the day 5, when I start to do practice with you, at the back of the mind, you should have the examiner mindset. So the examiner mindset comes first, practice comes after, and that practice will eventually lead you to success, pass. So I hope you all uh, note these two essential elements of how practice can help you pass. Is it just quantitative practice? No, it is an adequate practice. Adequate practice of recent papers, adequate practice of core areas. And secondly, the more important thing, read the examiner mindset. I hope every one of you have noted this formula very carefully, because this is the formula which you will start to apply from today. And this is the formula which you will be implementing over the next 1 month prior to you entering the exam hall for the AAA. You're taking this webinar at a very ideal time, right? Because from today to the day of your exam, you exactly have 1 month. And this is an ideal time which can really formulate your strategy. And if you really formulate your strategy today, it will be really wonderful for you to have success in the AAA exams, right? So that is the practice to pass, and that is how it will work for you. So first, read the examiner mindset, then second, adequate practice. So on the day 1, read the examiner mindset, and on the remaining 4 days, adequate practice. I hope that objective is clear, right, to all of you. Okay, let's start with the second perspective. The pass rates. Now, just to make you realize that how important is to read the examiner mindset and how important is to practice adequate. This graphical image in front of you puts the picture in in like a in like a consolidation. If you look at the pass rates of AAA, not just of the recent 5 exam sittings which are plotted in front of you, you need to see that the passing rate for AAA is on average 30%. And that average 30% passing rate for AAA is bringing you or all of us to a question that if there are 100 papers to be checked, 30% of those papers get passed and 70% of those papers gets failed. Now that is very challenging. That is a very difficult equation. But you need to understand that even the 30% students who get passed in the AAA exams, majority of them get passed in 50 to 55. So that means they're also passing in like a very dangerous zone. Yes, there are some students who scores into 60s, then again some who scores into 70s, and obviously they become the place winners. But the majority of the passing students in AAA, a considerable majority, gets passed into 50 to 55. 60s is very good, into 70s is excellent. So you need to understand with the 30% average global passing rate of AAA in not just the last few exam settings, over many exam settings, uh, you need to understand that 30% is not a big number here. And 30% means that 30% students are passing. Most of them are passing within 50 to 55. So that means there is a huge challenge here. And that huge challenge can only be overcome with practice to pass. Practice, pass. And I've just given you the illustration of practice to pass in my preceding slide, that how can you practice and in what context can you practice so that you can be passed. Now, fine, uh, with the average passing rates of 30%, this was very unusual last time in September 19. But that very unusual thing in September 19, where the passing rate touched 36%, that was the highest in last 14 exam sittings. That was the highest in last 14 exam sittings. But that was just short term, because in the very next exam sitting, we see the scale down impact and the passing rate became again 30. So that motivation that the passing rate in AAA has improved was not very long term, was very short term, and it fall down to 30%. So you need to understand and you need to realize that even with 36%, the majority of the students were failing. But yes, 36% was a better pass rate than the average pass rate of 30%, which AAA has maintained. And again, in the December 19 paper, it's still the same. Yes, December 19 paper did had some time management issues. A lot of students did had a complaint about time management. They thought the paper was too lengthy. But again, the student tends to write a lot. But even for a minute, I accept the student excuse that the paper was lengthy. That was one of the reason why a lot of students failed. But again, you need to overcome that. You need to write a concise answer. You need to write a relevant answer. You cannot just drag your answer. You cannot just stretch your answer so that you come out of the exam hall with an incomplete paper. So the major difference between September 19 and December 19 was that the September 19 paper was very predictable. December 19 paper was also very predictable. But the difference between the two is the time management. I have seen a lot of students in Pakistan and globally who connects with me complaining about time management, leaving on average 15% paper, leaving on average 15% paper, and then flunking at 47, 48, and 49 speaks of the passing rate dipping from 36% to 30%. So you are preparing yourself for March 2020 exams, keeping in mind that the AAA has an average passing rate of 30%. And you need to do a lot of efforts within the webinar and beyond the webinar so that you are successful. And I hope within the panel of attendees today who are taking this as a live webinar, There might be many who are attempting AAA for the first time, and there might be many who are repeating it. If you can just drop in your messages on the chat box, if any one of you is giving P7 for the first time, the AAA for the first time in March 2020, so I can just have a quick analysis of the number of students who are going in for the first attempt. Okay, so the passing rates and the passing rate putting up a challenging picture for all of you, right? And if you're going for the first attempt, you should be facing this challenge. So do you want to be among the 30% students who pass the triple in the first attempt? Do you all want to be among the 30% students who pass the AAA in the first attempt? Definitely yes, right? So for that, what you have to do? You have to do efforts, right? You need to do proper practice. So are you all prepared for proper practice? But for the proper practice, you need the examiner mindset. And that is the realization of the day one. On the day one, I will make you realize the examiner mindset, which will eventually help you in practice later. The objective, before I give you the timetable of the next 5 days, what will be happening today and over the next 5 days. The objective of this practice to pass session is to give you the right direction to pass the triple exam. A direction which is closer to examiner mindset. A direction which is closer to examiner mindset. These sessions over the next 5 days will be a mind opener for all of you, as they really drill down the practice and will mitigate your misconceptions you have for AAA paper. So let's start the journey to give you the right direction. So the focus is on the examiner mindset, right? So you're all ready to understand the examiner mindset, and you will be amazed that you have never understood the examiner mindset the way you will be understanding in the next 3 hours. So understanding the examiner mindset is the first right direction to pass the AAA paper. And this session will be a mind opener for you. It will open up your mind, will mitigate your confusions, will mitigate your misconceptions, will mitigate your myths around the AAA paper. So let's start on with the journey. Now, what is to happen in this webinar for March 2020? Now, because I have been conducting these webinars for over 9 sessions now. I started this journey from March 2018 exams, and now I am making a webinar for March 2020 exams. So it's almost like 2 years now since I am conducting these AAA webinars on a quarterly basis. So I need to make each webinar different from my previous webinar, because you can access the previous webinars, right? All of you have access to previous webinars. So I need to assure that my webinar looks different and looks different from my previous webinar, because ACCA has done an effort of making a library of the previous webinars, and you can easily access them. If I just want to show you the library, it's so easy. You can see in front of your screen the ACCA Pakistan library, which is available on Vimeo, vimeo.com, and you write vimeo.com/ACCA Pakistan/collections. That is such an easy hyperlink, right? Vimeo.com/ACCA Pakistan/collections, and you will reach the previous webinars. I'll just be putting this hyperlink for you, but you can see these previous webinars in front of you. On the left hand side up, you can see the December webinar. Then on the upside right, you can see the September webinar. Then on the downside left, you can see the June webinar, and then you can see the March webinar. So previous 4 webinars, which is approximately 60 hours. And this webinar, which is another 15 hours, that's approximately 75 hours. If you spend these 75 hours right from today till the day of your exam, you have a far better chance of success, right? So all of you please do access the previous webinars, particularly if you're giving the first attempt, because these previous webinars can be a real mind opener and a real eye opener for all of you. So this is the easiest way you can do it, right? This is the link. If I can just put it in big here so that all of you can note it down. Right in front of your screen, vimeo.com/ACCA Pakistan/collections. And you put that in your web browser and you can easily access the last 4 webinars. And this webinar is the 5th one. So you have in total 5 webinars to explore, which can be really good for you to make yourself better equipped for March 2020 exam. So is this hyperlink noted by all of you? vimeo.com/ACCA Pakistan/collections. Right, so it's vimeo.com/ACCA Pakistan/collections. It's right in front of your screen, right? Vimeo.com. Okay, this Word file will be saved and this Word file will be shared on the WhatsApp group, which you can join in for March 2020 sessions. The link of the WhatsApp group will be shared with all of you during the course of the webinar. You can join that and you can request that and you will be able to join the WhatsApp group. Okay, so back to my presentation. We were discussing that I want to make this webinar different from my previous webinars, right? Which you can access on Vimeo. So the day 1 is very different. And this is very different from all my previous webinars, right? Because on the day 1, for the first time, I am doing it that comprehensive. Read the mind of examiner. I have done read the mind of examiner in almost every previous webinar, but that was scattered. But this time it's consolidated. And this time it's coming on the day 1 to make you realize that without reading the mind of examiner, the next 4 days are useless. So from 6 to 9 p.m. the Pakistan Standard Time today, we will be focused on reading the mind of the examiner. Then on the day 2 tomorrow, I will be practicing risk of material misstatement, which is very, very important for March 2020 exams. Then on the day 3, I'll be practicing procedures and evidence, which is a very routine topic in the 100 marks paper. Then on the day 4, I will be practicing ethical and professional issues, which is another very routine topic in the AAA exams. And then on the day 5, I will be practicing audit reporting, which is another very routine topic in the 100 marks paper. So there is a lot of practice coming over the next 4 days. I hope you've marked the calendar. And today we are reading the mind of the examiner over the next 3 hours. So I hope this agenda is clear to all of you. And I tried making this agenda very different. And I'll be practicing questions tomorrow on day 3, day 4, day 5, which I have not practiced in my previous webinars. Again, just to make it different, because these topics have been covered in previous webinars, right? So you can get so many practice. I'll be doing a different reporting question this time, and you can get hold of my previous webinars for different reporting questions. So if you watch my previous webinars with this webinar, you will get so much practice, which is wonderful. Yes, other assignment I'm not doing this time because it's not important for this time. And even though if you want to cover other assignments, I've covered other assignments in my previous webinar. So other assignments can be covered from the previous webinars, which are available on the Vimeo channel for ACCA Pakistan. Right, so that's the agenda. Now, just before starting on with the day 1, which is about read the mind of the AAA examiner, I'm just taking a quick 6 to 7 minutes break, which is for the namaz break in Pakistan. And I'll be resuming back in like next 6 to 7 minutes, right? So it's not a long break. It's just approximately a 6 to 7 minutes, 7 minutes break perhaps, and I'll be resuming back. So we'll be starting directly with the agenda, which is read the mind of the AAA examiner. So you can have a break as well and refresh yourself for a very insightful session, which is about to start in the next 7 to 8 minutes. day one of the AAA Practice to Pass webinar. Hello and assalamu alaikum and welcome back after the break. We are into the day one of the Advanced Audit and Assurance Practice to Pass webinar for March 2020 exam. We just had an introductory phase prior to the namaz break, and we are now resuming back with the official start of the day one, where the focus is on reading the mind of the AAA examiner. If any one of you have just joined the webinar. Now, to read the mind of the AAA examiner, which is an utmost important thing and a very different thing, which I am doing over my previous webinars, to make you realize that how important reading the examiner mindset is prior to we start practicing from the second day tomorrow. Now, just before reading the mind of the AAA examiner, the paper format is very important because that will eventually help us to connect the mind of the examiner with the format of the paper. Now, a lot of you are appearing for the first time, and you might be needing the clarity on the paper format. We know that since the September 2018 exams, a format of the paper is being used where we have three questions which are all compulsory and are divided into two sections, Section A and Section B. The Section A consists of one 50 marks question, and the Section B consists of two 25 marks questions, and they're all compulsory. So there is no choice. The Section A, or the question one, is set at the stage of planning. So the case study, the question one case study is a planning case study. And that's exactly how the audit process starts. The question one can be planning of a existing client, or it can be a planning of a new client. Even in the question one, the examiner can involve practice management, which is a syllabus area. That is how you accept a new client. And as a student, you should know the parameters of accepting a new client, or what sort of issues, what sort of matters the audit firm consider when they are accepting a new client. So the question number one, the Section A case study, is a planning stage case study, and it is set either for a existing client, a current client, or for a new audit client. And if the examiner wants to involve accepting a new client and the matters relating to accepting a new client into the Section A, yes, the examiner can do it. The weightage of question number one is 46 technical marks, and there are 4 professional marks, which is definitely for writing a briefing note. There is no different formats in the AAA paper like the SBL paper. In the AAA paper, there is only one format in which you need to present your question number one, and that is to use a format of a briefing note. And obviously, there is an examiner mindset for a briefing note. You should know the examiner mindset for briefing note. 46 technical marks, how are they divided? I will be guiding you over the session today. But all of you, particularly those who are attempting the AAA for the first time, should realize that the Section A, question number one, is set at the stage of planning. So it can be planning of a new client or planning of an existing client. So 46 technical marks and 4 briefing note marks. So that makes the 50 marks question. Then you come to the Section B. Section B, the question number two, is set at the stage of completion and reporting. That's a must, right? So when you come to the question two, that's more like the wrapping up stage of the audit. That's more like the finalization stage of the audit. So examiner can give you anything in the question number two, which pertains to the stage of finalization. Examiner can give you ethical and professional issues which were identified during the course of the audit or at the finalization stage of audit. Examiner can give you a typical question on evidence in the working paper file, which is normally when the audit is being finalized, that you conclude your evidence. Or the examiner can give you a typical going concern question, which is another activity at completion stage. Or the examiner can give you a question about communicating the issues to those charged with governance, or even a typical question on reporting. I'll make you realize that. I will make you realize that when I say completion and reporting stage, as a student, you should know completion and reporting stage. If you're going to exams in March 2020 and you have no idea what happens at the stage of completion, and anything which happens at the stage of completion can come in the exam paper, in the question number 2. So you cannot just blame the triple examiner then, because the triple examiner has written a complete article on the completion stage of the audit. And if you're not reading that article, then the student himself or herself is to be blamed. Reporting stage. Examiner do give you reporting question in the question number 2, but not 25% marks, not the complete 25 marks are allocated to reporting. Some of those marks are allocated to the completion stage of the audit. And then the question 3. The question 3 is the most open question in the paper. Examiner can ask anything in the question 3. But yes, the question 3 has a very important area known as non-audit services. And a lot of time we have seen in the question 3, examiner has given the syllabus area F, which is the non-audit services like due diligence, like forensic. We have seen due diligence in the last exam, December 19. Just in the second last exam, September 19, we have seen forensic. So examiner has a capacity of giving other assignments, non-audit services in the question number 3. But apart from that, even we have seen December 18 exams, money laundering came in the question number 3. So examiner, even the current issues, uh, the new articles can be encashed in the question number 3. So question number 1 is very defined, right? Question number 2 is very defined. Question number 3 is also defined, other assignments, but not every time other assignments comes in. But if another assignment does not comes in, then the question 3 is the most open-ended question in the paper. I hope all of you, particularly those who are giving AAA for the first time, are clear on the structure of the paper format. If I can get your quick feedbacks on that, because I will be exploring this paper format over the next 2 hours in line with the examiner expectations. So question number 1 at the planning stage, question number 2 at the completion and reporting stage, question number 3 can have non-audit services, but it's the most open-ended question. Okay, so from the paper format, now let's see what your examiner expects from you. Because I normally believe after every exam sitting, and after the results are announced and the students from Pakistan and globally try to connect with me with their issues and problems, it do make me realize that there is an expectation gap between the student and the examiner. And that is the reason you are failing. That is the reason you're not being successful. And I want to explore this expectation gap on a very serious note today. And I just want to assure that over the next 2 hours, we can reduce this gap. Because if this gap is reduced, the chances of your success in the March 2020 exams will become more better, right? And uh, yes, there is an article on completion stage. I'll be sharing that. Don't worry, over the next 2 hours. Don't be worrying about that. Yes, data analytics is a very new article. I've covered that in my previous webinar as well. And please, if there are so many questions, right? And I need to focus on my session. So if your question remains unattended, drop your question on the WhatsApp group and I will be answering the questions after the session ends today. So just let's focus on the session and let's assure that we are reducing the expectation gap between the examiner and the student, which is one of the most significant reason the students are failing in the AAA paper. So let's start on the journey. Focus yourself on the screen and concentrate for the next 30 minutes. Examining team who sets the paper for AAA and the students who go to the exam hall and give the paper of AAA. There is a big gap. which is to be reduced. And that's where I am working today. Over the next 2 hours, you will realize that how important is it to reduce it, because examining team has a certain expectations from students, and the student community is not meeting those expectations. Those who are even scoring marks into 60s and 70s. Those who aren't are flunking the paper at 47, 48, 49, or even less than that. So you need to realize that are you really meeting the expectation of the examining team? You need to ask this question to yourself, particularly those who are repeating. So the examining team has an expectation. Have you ever bothered about reading those expectations? Have you ever bothered about putting time on those expectations? Or you are just preparing the way you want to be prepared? And that is the dilemma, that is the problem, that is the issue that the student keeps failing in the triple exam. So examining team and the student, and there has to be a reduction here. And if there is a reduction, the reduction can only be possible with the supports available by the examining team. How will you read the mind of the examiner? Will you call the examiner to read the mind of the examiner? Not at all. Will you email the examiner to ask him the examiner mindset? Not at all. How will you do it? The ACCA or the examining team has published their mindset. That mindset is in the black and white. That mindset is on the website, which you can easily download and read. But have you ever bothered about downloading it? Have you ever bothered about reading it? So I will be showing you some of the help, some of the resource and the benefits of these resources over the next 2 hours, which will definitely make you realize that this reduction is possible. And this is only possible through the support available by the examining team, which is published. This is not hidden. This is not for me. This is not for the ACC examining team. This is for everyone. Okay, so we were discussing that this support available by the examining team is published, right? And you need to focus on it. But you need to ask a question to yourself: how much time have you ever spent on these resources, which you will be seeing in the next 10-15 minutes? So let's explore it, right? Let's explore how reduction is possible. But have you tried to realize in the next last 5 minutes that there is an expectation gap? Do you think this formula in front of your screen is a valid formula while students are failing the triple exam? Because on one side is the examining team and on the other side is the student community. The students are doing what they want to do, but the examining team is setting a paper with certain expectations, right? So is this reduction possible? Do you all believe in that? If you can give me your quick answers to that. Do you believe this reduction is possible and this reduction can help you pass the paper? So are you all very focused on how this reduction will work? And once the day ends today, will you all be working on this reduction? Right? So that's wonderful, right? Let's start working on the reduction formula. How will you reduce the expectation gap? Now, this is what I thought of. You can see the brain, you can see the mind down here. You can see this mind here, right? Let's assume this is the examiner mindset as an illustration. Let's make it interactive, right? Now, I think there are 5 things which is in the examiner mindset, and you have to read each one of them. I hope you can see those bulbs. The first one is the exam technique articles. The examining team has written exam technique articles, and I'll be showing each and everything to you, so don't be worried about it. This is just the introductory slide. So the very first way of reading the examiner mindset is to download the exam technique articles. Read the exam technique articles. I'll be showing them to you. Second is the examiner reports for every single exam sitting. December 19, September 19, June 19, March 19. They're available for every single exam sitting. Read the examiner report so you know what your examiner expects from you. Well, I'll be guiding you from where and how. This is just an introductory slide. Then the suggested answers of the examiner. How to go down into suggested answer, because there is so much misunderstanding in the student community about the suggested answers. Marking schemes, and finally the document published by ACCA examining team known as Read the Mind of Marker, how the marker will mark your paper. These 5 documents in front of your screen, which I will be exploring over the next 2 hours and showing you the hyperlinks from where you can get these documents. But these are 5 documents which makes the mindset of the examiner. And now ask a question to yourself seriously. How many of you have ever gone through the 5, or how many of you even have no idea about many of them, that they are available and they're published? So there is such a big student community who even don't have idea about all 5 of them. There is such a big student community who only have an idea of 1 and 2. And even if they have an idea, they're not reading it. They're not spending time on it. So can you see the 5 bulbs? Can you see the 5 different colors in front of your screen? Can you see the blue color exam technique article? Can you see the green color examiner report? Can you see the yellow color suggested answer? Can you see the orange color marking scheme? Can you see the red color read the mind of marker? And can you see the examiner mindset as like an illustration? So let's explore each one of them, right? So that you have an idea about how important each of them is. Now, what you need to do, you have 1 month for exams, right? That's a lot of time. Take a file, take a box file today, and in the box file, have 5 segregations: the blue, the green, the yellow, the orange, the red. And in those 5 segregations, have the 5 mindsets of examiner. Number 1, you should have 5 technique articles. I'll show you from where will you get those 5 technique articles, but you should download these 5 technique articles, take a printout and put that in a file. Examiner reports, I'll show you from where you will get that, but you need 4 recent examiner reports only. 4 recent examiner reports. I'll tell you which one. You download them, take a printout and put that in a file. Suggested answers, 4 recent suggested answers. Not all, 4 recent suggested answer. Take a printout, put that in your file. 4 recent marking schemes. If you download 4 recent answers, automatically at the end of the answer is the marking scheme. So eventually, if you download 4 suggested answers, you are automatically getting 4 recent marking schemes. And then just one document, which is known as read the mind of marker. So I'll be showing you the hyperlinks when the session gets down today. Download them, take a printout, put that in a file, and what I have taught you today, start to read them. And you will be amazed after 3 days, 4 days, that this file you are maintaining, after 3 days, after 4 days, you will think this file can enable me to be successful. This file can help me to be successful. So is that structure of a file clear? Exam technique articles, 5 of them. Which 5? I'll just be guiding you. Examiner reports, recent 4s, where to get them, I'll be guiding you. Suggested answers, recent 4, where to get them, I'll be guiding you. Marking schemes, recent 4, where to get them, I'll be guiding you. One document known as read the mind of marker, where will you get that, I'll be guiding you. But this is your responsibility, right? To maintain a very proper file. So that's on your part. And I am trusting you that all of you will maintain this file in the next 24 hours. The next thing. Firstly, you need 5 exam technique article. So in the very first thing you will have in your file is the 5 exam technique articles. I hope you know that your examiner has written 5 technique articles. You can see the hyperlink of those technique articles under my presentation, and this presentation is being shared with all of you. So you can just click this hyperlink or copy this hyperlink or type this hyperlink and reach the destination where the technique articles are available. 5 technique articles on number 1 on ethics, number 2 on risk, number 3 on accounting issues, number 4 on procedures, number 5 on reporting. And you know these are core areas. You know this has to come in a 100 marks paper. So is it not better you know the technique to write an ethics answer? How will you meet the examiner expectation in an ethics answer? Can you meet the examiner expectation in an ethics answer? Yes. If you read the technique article part 1, can you reduce the expectation with the examiner in a question on risk? Are you writing the risk answer rightly? Are you writing the risk answer the way your examiner expects from you? You can read the technique article part 2. Are you writing the accounting treatment in a very proper manner? So many times in the AAA paper we need to write an accounting treatment. Are we writing the accounting treatment in a proper manner? Read the part 3 article. Are we writing the procedure in the right manner? Read the part 4 article. Are we giving a right answer to a reporting question? Read the part 5 article. Do you all believe ethics, risk, accounting issues, procedure, and reporting is fundamental part of your 100 marks paper? And when you read these technique articles, you will be amazed to know what your examiner expects from you. Let's show you an example. These 5 technique articles are available, right, on the ACCA website. It's so simple. Even if you go on Google and you simply write on the Google AAA technical articles, as simple as that. AAA technical articles on a search engine. AAA technical articles on a search engine, and you press enter. The very first link you get on Google the very first link you get on Google, that is AAA technical articles. Click that and you reach the place. I've also already shared the hyperlink right on your slides. But even on the Google, if you say AAA technical articles, enter, the very first link is the technical articles. Now, when you reach the technical articles, which is right in front of your screen, you can see the first 5 articles. The first 5 articles are technique articles. Read the titles. It says Exam Techniques for Advanced Audit and Assurance Part 1, Exam Technique for Advanced Audit and Assurance Part 2, Exam Technique for Audit and Assurance Part 3, Exam Technique for Audit and Assurance Part 4, and Exam Technique for Audit and Assurance Part 5. Have you all seen those 5 now? The first 5 articles, right? Please keep trying giving me answers. So I know we have an interactive session, right? Have you all seen the 5 articles in front of your screen? The hyperlink is shared on your slides. Will you all reach here, download them, take a printout, maintain a file, right? So the 5 technique articles, and each technique article will tell you about what? Technique. What's the focal point of this article? Technique. So if you don't know the technique, how will you be reducing the expectation with your examiner? Let's do one exercise here. Right, this is a Word file I'll be sharing with all of you at the end of the session in the WhatsApp group. But if you see this Word file in front of you, when I say there is a document known as an exam technique article, part 1 to 5, what is the focal point? The focal point is technique. What is your examiner trying to teach you? Your examiner is trying to teach you technique. Now, what techniques is he trying to teach you? Number 1, technique on how to solve a question on ethics and the marking scheme. Technique on how to solve a question on risk and the marking scheme. Number 3, technique on how to write an accounting treatment. How to write an accounting treatment and the marking scheme. Number 4, technique on how to write a procedure and the marking scheme. And lastly, technique on how to answer a reporting question and the marking scheme. Are you understanding the importance of these 5 articles? They're not giving you a study material, right? They're giving you a technique. Technique means an exam technique. You're getting to know the marking scheme, because a lot of times students ask, what is the marking scheme of ethics? And you're amazed that the student has not read the article. A lot of times students ask, how many marks will I get if I write an accounting treatment? And you're amazed looking at the student that the student has not read the article on accounting treatments. So if you want to know the technique to write them and the marking scheme, please assure that these 5 technique articles are read as at the earliest. So eventual, these techniques is the examiner mindset. So try to read these techniques, because this is the examiner mindset, and that's what will enable you to pass. So is everyone getting the message of these technique articles? I have explored these technique articles in my previous webinars in isolations. I've gone through scattered on these technique articles in my previous webinars. If you go through my previous webinars, you will see I have the same emphasis. If someone of you is repeating, will understand that I keep keep emphasizing on these articles. So these are important articles, right? Which you all must read so that you know the techniques. But how will you read it? You need to do one thing. Might look very illogical, might look very unusual, but you should have a red marker and you should have a green marker when you're reading the techniques and you start to read techniques. When you're reading techniques, at a certain point, the examiner will say, students should not do this. Underline that in red. Red marker. Student should not do this. Students should avoid this. Wherever you get such a sentence where the examiner is saying no, underline that with red and keep numbering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. See how many do nots of examiner you get from the article. And when you're reading a technique article, you will find student should demonstrate, or student should do this, or the student should apply this. Wherever you get that, keep underlining that in green. Student should do this, green, number 1. Student should do this, green, number 2. Student should do this, green, number 3. So when you read a technique article and you end the technique article, can you see a lot of red in the technique article? If you can respond me. When you have done with the reading, can you see a lot of red in the technique article, which you must have underlined, right? And can you see a lot of green in the technique article, which you must have read? So what will that green and red help you with? After you have read the article with the red and green marker, then try to make a summary of do's and don'ts. Try to make a summary, right? Yes, green is the do's, right? Red is the don'ts. Red is a danger sign. So make a summary. So is everyone getting the track? One technique article, download, read it. How are you reading it? With a red marker and a green marker. The red is the danger, should not do it. The green is what should you do. When you read the article, take a page, take a clean page, make 2 columns like this. Exam technique article part 1. Make 2 columns like this. Make 2 columns like this. Red don'ts, green do's. After you read the article. And after you read the article, write all the don'ts, write all the do's. And that is the summary for your exam paper. And 1 day before your exam paper, 2 days before your exam paper, just go through this. You will not do the mistake. You will not do the mistake. So will you make summaries for each technique articles, the do's and don'ts? Is that message crystal clear to all of you? Is that message 100% clear to all of you? So will you be doing this 5 articles and a summaries of these articles with green and red with do's and don'ts? But do you think this will bring you a step closer to examiner expectations? Do you believe this will bring you a step closer to examiner expectations? And do you believe how many marks can you gain from it? If you just avoid the red, if you just avoid the don'ts, how many marks can you gain? A lot of them. And if you just apply the greens, how many marks can you gain? A lot of them, a lot of them. So is this really benefiting you, reading the mind of examiner? I hope this is giving you a strategy 1 month before your exam, right? And 1 month is a good time. You can do miracles in 1 month. And 1 month is such a productive time for all of you to sit down, make a proper strategy so that you can pass the AAA paper. Right? So that's exam techniques article, right? 5 of them. Maintain a file. So if I just take you back to my presentation here, so now you can see the 5 technique articles: ethics, risk, accounting issues, procedures, reporting. Download them, maintain a file. So now can you realize the file? So what is the first thing which should go in the file? Exam technique articles. And do you know how to read these exam technique articles now? Leave aside the technical articles. We're not just currently focusing on technical articles. We're just trying to make a strategy, right? So don't just get confused with other things. Just focus on exam technique articles, right? So should we take the number 1? Okay, let's take this. So that goes into your file. Okay, the second thing which should be in your file is the examiner reports. Recent 4, because there are so many. The so many can waste your time, but just a 4 of them can be really helpful. Let's see how and in what context. Examiner reports. If you have ever bothered about going through examiner reports, there are 2 things in examiner reports. Examiner report covers weaknesses of the students, which they have done in the question number 1, in the question number 2, in the question number 3. I'll just show you an illustration of an examiner report and you will be amazed how detailed an examiner report is. The examiner report covers the strengths. Even the examiner tells you this was done good by the student. This was done excellent by the student. The examiner will even appreciate you in the examiner report. And the examiner will also criticize you in the examiner report. So you will see a lot of appreciation of the examiner, which is again something you can underline with green. See, I've already used a green color. And the weaknesses, something where the examiner is criticizing you, you can use the red color. And at some places, the examiner will recommend you that in the future, when you give exams, don't do this. So there will be a lot of value additions, recommendations. So examiner will not just tell you what student did bad in December 19 or what student did good in December 19, but the examiner will also tell you that when you come for March 20, you should do this. So it's quite a productive document, which is known as examiner reports. Again, the hyperlink of examiner reports is given under my presentation here, which can help you reach the destination where examiner reports for AAA are available. Let's give you the practicality of this. Again, when you go on the Google write AAA examiner reports. Just like you write AAA technical articles, on the Google write AAA examiner report and press enter. The very first hyperlink you get through Google, you click on that and you reach the examiner report section, which is known as the examining team guidance. I hope you have seen it, or perhaps you might be looking at it for the first time. How simple that is? AAA technical articles, enter the very first link, click it. AAA examiner report on the Google, enter the very first link, click it, and you reach here, examining team guidance. And you go down and you will see the examining team guidance. Last 4 attempts. So last 4 attempts means that you need to download exam technique guidance for December 19, 1, September 19, 2, June 19, 3, and March 19, 4. So how many examiner reports are you downloading? 4. December 19, September 19, June 19, March 19. Now what will you do when you download them? Let's illustrate that. But is everyone clear? Where is the examiner report? Can you reach the destination examiner report? Okay, and can you download them easily, the four of them? I hope a lot of you must be downloading it for the first time. A lot of you might even be having an idea, okay, this is a document available. I have no idea this document is available, right? So on the Google, just type AAA examiner report, enter. You get the first link on Google, click that, and you reach the page, examiner guidance. I've also given the hyperlink right on the presentation slide. Okay, is everyone clear on that? For December 19, September 19, June 19, and March 19. Now I'm giving you illustration of one so that you know exactly what you need to do. Okay, now just like the exam technique article, right? When you download four recent examiner reports, which is basically 2019 exams, December, September, June, and March. You download them, right? What are you doing? Once you download them, again, you have with you a red marker, and again with you have a green marker. You will keep identifying the red marker for the criticism, the examiner will tell you, and the green marker for all the appreciations, where the examiner appreciates or provides any recommendation. And again, at the end of it, you will make a summary of the do's and don'ts, just like you did it on the technique articles. Right? Is that clear? I'm now giving you an illustration. I'll be reading at least a page and two with you so that you know how productive the examiner report is. But a red marker and a green marker, and you start reading the examiner report. In the examiner report, you will get across many things in like criticism, many things in like appreciations, and you keep underlining them with reds and greens. And at the end of the day, you make a presentation. Now you make a summary, sorry. Now, once you make a summary, you will have summary for December, summary for September, summary for June, summary for March. Now, ideally, in all these four sessions, you must be having criticism about risk, criticism about evidence, criticism about procedures, criticism about reporting, criticism about ethics, because these are regular areas of AAA. So in these four exam settings, you will get criticism of all the main areas. So you will be ready that I will not be doing this mistake. I will not be doing this mistake in the March 2020 exam. So do you believe these examiner reports can bring you one step closer to the examiner expectation? More closer after the technique articles? Let's do an exercise. I have chosen one examiner report as an illustration, which is basically the March 19 examiner report. So just let's explore it. Okay, now right in front of your screen, you can see this examiner report, right? This is the examiner report of March 2019 exams, which is very recent, the four recent you have to download. Now, whenever you read an examiner report, this is such a productive document, and I'm just reading 1 and 2 pages with you just to give you a track that you will follow it. The examiner, first of all, in every examiner report, the examiner will first give you an idea about the journal comments. These are journal comments of the overall exam setting, not specific to a question, right? Now, if you can just see that while I was reading it, I underlined something in red, which you can see right in front of your screen. It says, however, the ability to apply knowledge appropriately rather than simply stating a learned point is still not demonstrated by a majority of candidates. He's criticizing, examiner is criticizing that the students simply apply the learned knowledge. They don't apply what is being asked for in the case study. So examiner is a bit irritative with students that you keep applying the bookish knowledge or the learned knowledge, but you don't seem to apply that to the context of the case study. See, I underlined that in red. Then after that, the examiner is giving you something in green. Those students who did demonstrate such skills were able to score well and secure a clear pass marks. And many candidates performed well in the question 1 and question 3. So he's appreciating that a lot of students who applied the knowledge scored better than those students who just kept focused on the learned knowledge. So the learned knowledge cannot give you anything in the exam paper, right? It's more about the application to the case study. It's more about solving the case study rather than you just take the learned knowledge from the BPB book or the Kaplan book to the exam paper. So can you see those red underlinings and green underlinings? That's exactly what what you will be doing back at home. And these reds and greens will bring you so closer to examiner that the examiner is giving you criticism, but the examiner is even appreciating you, right? Then you go down, reading it further. Okay, can you see more greens underlining? It says marks are awarded. I'm reading the green underline, right? Marks are awarded at the AAA level for the application of the knowledge to a given scenario where candidates demonstrate an understanding of the issue presented. So the examiner is saying you have to do this. Marks are awarded at the AAA level for the application of the knowledge to a given scenario, not rote learning. So see, can you see examiner is giving you insights to pass? We're just on the first page. Then look at the next paragraph, which is a much better paragraph. Examiner says appropriate exam techniques should be developed using question practice for the skill of time management. So he's saying you should practice a lot of questions for time management, reading relevant technical articles and exam technique articles. See, even the examiner is saying you should read the exam techniques article published on ACCA website. And even the examiner is saying you should read the examiner reports for each sitting. Now see, where am I as a tutor getting the examiner mindset? Do I have different resources than what you don't have? I equally have the same resources, right? But the difference is the resources being used by students, how you use them and how I use them. So, but can you see the examiner is giving you a lot of suggestions, what you can do, how you can do, and I have underlined them in green. And then see a very important suggestion of the examiner on the first page, bottom. From a technique perspective, candidates who started the exam with their strongest question tended to score good marks. Now, so many times the student asks, should I start with question 1 or should I start with question 2 or should I start with question 3? Is it not the examiner giving you the answer? From a technique perspective, the examiner is saying candidates who started the exam with their strongest question tended to score good marks and set themselves for a good performance overall. So is your examiner saying you can start in any order? Can you give me your answers? Is the examiner saying you can start in any order? So is that not a frequently asked question of the student community? Should I go in the order? Should I do question number 1? Should I do question number 2? Examiner is saying, yes, you can even start with question 3. And the examiner is saying even those who started with the strongest question were better than the other students. So do you believe that this very first page This very first page I read in the live session, has it given you some insights of examiner? And there are still 4 pages remaining. But has it really opened your mindset as students that even if one page can give you so much, what about the remaining 4 pages? And you have to read 4 examiner reports. Multiply that by the 4 examiner reports. How much will you get out of it? 5 pages of one examiner report, and you're reading 4. That's 20 pages. From 20 pages, how many do's and don'ts will you be getting? Do you think this is an ideal resource which can bring you closer to 50 marks? There are so many questions you keep asking yourself, which are given in the examiner report. There are so many questions which you keep asking your friends, your tutors, which are given in the examiner reports. And then again, when you move ahead, you will see specific comments. Now, these are specific comments for questions. Question number 1. So examiner report is divided into journal comments and specific comments. The journal comments is for overall. Specific comments is whether question 1, what was done right and wrong in the question number 1, what was done right and wrong in the question number 2, what was done right or wrong in the question number 3. So you can learn so much from these specific comments. See, the examiner over here is also telling you that how you should write a briefing note. See, the examiner is telling in the question number 1 examiner report that this is what should be a briefing note be like. And he's saying if you write a briefing note like this, I will give you 4 marks. So there are so many positive things, right, which you can get from um, this examiner report. Right, so will you make a habit of downloading it, reading it with reds and greens, identifying the weak points, identifying the strong points, and you have to do your self-analysis, right? You have to do your self-analysis. You need to see whether you were doing it in the past. There might be a lot of problems which you underline and you say, I was doing it, I was doing it. If you find it, that's wonderful. Because a lot of time you will underline a problem and you will say, this is exactly what I was doing in my last paper and might be the reason I failed. Is that clear to all of you? So will these examiner reports help you doing your constructive analysis and can help you identifying why you keep failing the AAA paper? Is that clear for all of you? If I can get a broad set yes and no answers from majority of the attendees. So how many examiner reports are you downloading? 4 recent, right? And what will you do with these examiner reports? What will you do with these examiner reports? You will do the do's and don'ts analysis, right? With which color markers? Red and green, right? Red for the danger, green for what is encouraging. What is encouraging is green. What is red is like the danger, should not do it. Okay, if I take you back to my presentation. So do you understand the importance of examiner report now? That the examiner report gives you so much insights about the student weaknesses that they apply the learned knowledge. The strength was that the student who apply the case study will pass. The student who just take the learned knowledge will fail. And he was giving you a recommendation even, right? That the student who starts with the strongest question first is better than the student who starts with the weakest question first. So have you seen all 3 of them in one page? Weakness, strengths, and recommendations. Right, so examiner reports is the second thing which should go into your file. Now look at your file. In the file, the second thing you have is the examiner reports. So we have covered it, tick. Okay, now comes the most important thing where the student community has so many misunderstandings, so many misconceptions, so many myths the student community has made around examiner answers, suggested answers. How many suggested answers are you downloading? Recent four. And within those suggested answers, you will get the recent four marking schemes. And recent four paper means in all the recent four papers, you will get questions on risk, procedures, evidence, reporting, ethics, which is all the core stuff of the AAA paper. Examiner answers, right? Suggested answer. I think this is the most sought after source. I think this is the resource which mostly student download. Examiner answers. I think this is better among the student community, right? Because I think the most important resource the student community download is suggested answers. Let's see what you do wrong with suggested answers. Suggested answers. Before I do an analysis on the suggested answer and help you guide you what you should be doing on suggested answers, when you are reading the suggested answer, there are some don'ts which needs clarity. Length of answer. A lot of times students download the suggested answer and the stress level increases. They come to the tutor that examiner has written such a long answer and you told us not to write the long answer because if I write a long answer, I'll not be completing my paper. So who is right, the tutor or the examiner? The problem is that the student only gets amazed with the examiner answer. He don't read the note which is given by the examiner, which says this is a tutorial guidance. Tutorial guidance means this is an ideal answer which covers everything because examiner is not solving the answer for 10 marks. The examiner is solving the answer in full so that you get knowledge of the complete case study. But in the exam, you are solving the answer for a certain marks and you're solving it within the time management. Examiner is writing an answer for the purpose of knowledge so that the student can gain a lot of knowledge which can later help them in some exam papers. But the length of the examiner answer is not to be idealized, is not to be considered as a stress factor because you cannot write the length the examiner is writing. Otherwise, you will not even be completing a 50% of your paper. So the first big don't with the suggested answers, they are tutorial guidance. They are guidance which covers the complete answer and you should not idealize the length of the answer because you need to connect the answer with the marking scheme. Do's. What good thing you can get out of the examiner answer? The bad thing from the examiner answer is the length. Never look at it. But what good can you get out of the examiner answer? Number one, how the examiner develops a point. If the examiner is writing a risk, how he develops a risk. One, if the examiner is writing an ethical issue, how is the examiner developing an ethical issue? If the examiner is writing a procedure, how is the examiner writing a procedure? There were 6 marks for procedures and the examiner wrote 15 procedures. No, I'm not looking at 15 procedures because for 6 marks, I need to write 6 procedures. So I'm not looking at that the examiner wrote 15. So for 6 marks, I have to write 15. No, for 6 marks, I have to write 6. But what am I looking from the examiner answer? How he developed a procedure. Is everyone getting my point? If if there was a question on ethical issues which had 5 marks, now we know every ethical issue is worth 1 mark. And so if I am writing an answer on ethical issues for 5 marks, I will be writing 5 ethical issues because every ethical issue is 1 mark. But when I see the examiner answer, the examiner might have written for 5 marks, eight issues. And I will be confused. For 5 marks, should I be writing 8 issues? No. For 5 marks, you are writing 5 issues. But what are you learning from the examiner answer? How he develops an ethical issue, how he writes an ethical issue. So, can you see the development of an issue from an examiner answer? How he develops a risk, how he develops ethics, how he develops procedure, how he develops reporting. So, can you get to know the development of a point rather than knowing how many points the examiner is writing? So are we learning the length or are we learning the development of the point from the examiner answer? If I can have your quick answers to that. Are we learning the development of the point or are we learning the length of the answer? And is everyone clear what development of a point means? Okay, number two, presentation of the answer. How the examiner presents the answer. Do he makes paragraphs? Do he use headings? Do he makes answer in bullets? Where does examiner make answers in bullets? Identify that. Where do examiner write answers in paragraph? Identify that. If you see examiner writing procedures, you will see examiner writing procedures in bullets. If you see an answer of risk, you will see examiner writing risk in a paragraph. So can you learn the presentation from the examiner answer, where to write in bullets and where to write in paragraph rather than asking the tutor, where should I use a paragraph and where should I use the bullets? Is that presentation clear? Where should I use headings? Can I use headings? Go and see the examiner answer. You will see so many instances where examiner has used headings and so many instances where examiner has not. So examiner is saying there is a flexibility. You want to use headings, use it. You don't want to use them, don't use it. Breaking paragraphs. How does examiner breaks paragraph? Does he keeps writing and writing and writing and writing like student does? Or does the examiner break paragraph after like 2 to 4 sentences? You must have seen examiner keep breaking paragraph after like 2 to 4 sentences or like after 4 sentences. But examiner don't write like 6 sentence, 8 sentence, 10 sentence and don't break the paragraph. But there is such a bad habit among student community that they don't break the paragraph. Have you ever thought about doing all this from the examiner answer? I think the only one thing you see from the examiner answer is the length, which is the don't. Have you ever done do's from the examiner answer, honestly? Have you ever seen development of a point from an examiner answer? Answer? Never. To me, it's never, right? Because I've seen so many students who don't see the development of a point from an examiner answer. Have you ever seen how the examiner breaks the paragraph after how many sentences? Have you ever seen how the examiner presents the answer? So what are you learning from examiner answer? Learn good things. Learn good things rather than just get your stress level up the length of the answer. Such a big answer, such a huge answer. How will I write this answer? No. Is that clear to all of you? So what are you getting from the suggested answers? Developing a point. Will I be developing a point for you? Yes, on the day 2, on the day 3, on the day 4, and on the day 5. I will be developing a point for risk tomorrow. I will be developing a point for of evidence and procedures day after tomorrow. I will be developing reporting on the last day. I will be developing ethics on the 4th day. So will I be guiding you on all this? Yes. So day 1 is just the formation, right? Day 2 is the practice. So how to develop a point, how to present an answer, how to break a paragraph, you will practice that tomorrow, right? You will practice that over the next 4 days. But are you getting my message that when you download the suggested answer, what are you finding from the suggested answer? So will you have 4 recent answers in your file, in your working paper file as being auditors? And do you know what exactly now you need to do with the suggested answers? Explore them, explore them. Okay, let's find the final conclusion before I show you an example of an examiner answer and the marking scheme. Now see what you are doing basically. When you download 4 recent examiner answers of the 2019 exams, what are you doing? Number 1, explore them to see how examiner develops a point, present a point, break a para for risk, ethics, procedures, reporting, evidence, and other areas. So once you explore the examiner answers, will you be able to know how the examiner develops a point for risk? What he do? What sort of things he do when he's developing a point in risk? For example, when you see the examiner developing a point on risk, he focuses on risk, why it is a risk, and the implication of risk on the financial statement. If it is an audit risk question, or if it is a risk of material misstatement question. So how the examiner develops a point? Examiner first speak of the risk, then justify why it is the risk, then the implication of the risk on the financial statement. And I'll be doing this exercise with you tomorrow. Or if the examiner is answering a question on ethics, then the examiner will first tell you that, okay, the examiner will first identify the ethical issue, will then justify why it is an ethical issue, identify the relevant threat, which is self-review, self-interest, whatever, right? So ethical issues, justify why it is an ethical issue, identify the relevant threat. And that's what examiner do for an ethical issue and for everything. So you're not going deep inside examiner answers, right? You're just trying to find the best things from the examiner answer, because if you go deep inside examiner answers, you might get lost. Don't go deep inside. Just do a surface analysis. Just like find how he develops a point and exit. Don't go deep inside. So try not to spend a lot of time on examiner answers, but at least try to spend some time so that you find the development of a point, the presentation of the point, and the breaking of the paragraph. Is that clear to all of you? Okay, the next thing. Okay, if I just show you one of the example, see, suppose I find one of the examiner answer like this one, the most recent one. See, these are answers, right? And when you look at these answers, what can I take from answers? Question number 1. From question number 1, what I can take? At least I can take how the examiner starts the briefing note. I can take this tick. So at least I know a briefing note starts with a briefing note 2 from subject introduction. At least I can take this, right? But how the examiner wrote an introduction? No, I'll write my own introduction. But at least I know this is how the examiner starts the briefing note. Then the examiner has used the headings. Okay, I will use the headings. Number 2. Okay, now how the examiner wrote the risk. Okay, this is how the examiner made a structured paragraph Can you see the breaks of paragraphs? Are they very lengthy paragraphs here? Or has the examiner broken paragraphs very structured, in a very structured manner? So what are you picking from examiner answer? The presentation, the structure? You're not you're not just reading them through. You can read them for the development of a point, but you cannot. Can you write exactly the examiner wrote? Otherwise, the passing rate would have been zero. So ultimately, you need to write your own answer, and the examiner, if the examiner is pleased with your answer, examiner will give you 50 marks. But can you just rote-learn the examiner answer and go to the exam hall? Right, so try to find these things from examiner answer. Now just if I can show you something here which is much more important, that when you explore examiner answers, and examiner answers are bigger answers, and that's not to be worried about, you're just learning, right? You can see examiner wrote these are tutorial notes, tutorial guidance. See, when the examiner is writing additional informations, examiner is writing additional informations, right? Examiner is writing them in bullets. Can you see examiner has used bullets, additional informations? Examiner has used bullets even when the examiner is writing procedures. Can you see examiner using bullets when he's writing procedures? So many misconceptions can be mitigated from examiner answers, right? Okay, the last thing from these examiner answers. See, when the examiner is working on ethical issues, examiner is writing in paragraphs. Examiner is writing in paragraphs, right? But you cannot write that long paragraph, but at least you can read this paragraph to understand how the examiner develops a point, and you can reduce the length. You can just see how the examiner develops an answer on ethics. Is that clear to all of you? Are you understanding what exactly you need to do from the examiner answers? What sort of things you need to search from examiner answer? If I can get your responses, will that be beneficial for all of you? Okay, the most important thing, which student tends to ignore. When you reach the last few pages of the answer, which you are downloading, you will get this, which is the most important thing, which is known as marking scheme. Now, if you're downloading 4 recent examiner answers, so will you be getting the 4 recent marking schemes as well? So will you get to know the marking scheme for risk, the marking scheme for procedure, the marking scheme for ethical issues, the marking scheme for reporting? So examiner is giving you the marking scheme for audit risk. For example, he's telling, see, it is important for all of you to understand one thing, that when you write your answer on audit risk, for example, you're writing an answer for December 19 paper at home, right? And you downloaded the December 19 paper and you wrote your answer. Now you want to see, am I writing the right answer or the wrong answer? You will not just go back and reconcile your answer with examiner answer. Rather than the points you note in your answer, you will reconcile that whether my points are reconciling with the points given here. See, this is the examiner telling you that these were the risk in the December 19 paper, right? Examiner saying these were the risk which were there in the December 19 paper, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You need not to write all 9 of them, but the examiner is saying these were maximum risk which were there in the December 19 paper. Now, when you wrote your answer, and you wrote like 6 risk, and you go and reconcile your examiner answer, and the 6th risk you wrote were in the list here. Suppose you wrote a risk, asset held for sale, and you find the risk here. You wrote a risk for government grant, and the government grant risk was there. You wrote a risk on the audit committee, and the audit committee risk was here. You need to reconcile your points with the examiner points, not the answer. If 50% and more than 50% of your points are reconciling with examiner points, you are a good student. If 50% and more of your points are reconciling with examiner points, you're a good student. Less than that, you need to practice more. Are you getting this message clearly? That when you write your own answer on risk and you want to see whether I have identified the right risk, reconcile the risk you have identified with the risk given in the examiner answer scheme. And if the examiner answer scheme contains the risk which you have identified and the examiner has also mentioned, then that means you have identified a good risk. Is that clear to all of you? We need to do a practice on risk tomorrow, right? So very focused questions to risk will be settled down tomorrow. But do you believe there is a marking scheme plan given at the end of every answer paper? And can that be helpful to you to assure, will I get 3 marks? Will I get 1 marks? So try to explore these marking schemes, right? As much as possible, because these marking schemes, the good thing with these marking schemes is that they contain so many bullets. And the bullets are these suggested points. Uh, See, these are all suggested points. I think you can save a lot of time if you read examiner marking scheme than the answer, because a marking scheme also give you the marks, and the marking scheme also give you the uh, pointers. And if your pointers reconcile with your pointers, you're a good student. So is it not better that we just go through the marking scheme pages and we just reconcile our answer with the marking scheme pointers? Will that be better rather than putting a lot of time on the examiner answer? So if you have the marking scheme, you know the marks and you know the pointers. So if your pointer gets matched with the examiner pointer, then that means you will get marks, right? So should a marking scheme be a better document for knowing the marks and for knowing the pointers? Because eventually we need to be writing, we need to reconcile our points with examiner points rather than our answer with examiner answer. Is that clear to all of you? Okay, so try to explore these marking schemes. They will guide you about how you should be gaining marks in exam paper, right? So download 4 recent exam papers and 4 recent marking schemes, and that will really give you a comprehensive overview of developing a point, presenting a point, breaking a paragraph, and learning good things, right? So in your file, that means in your file, you now have suggested answers, recent 4. In your file, you have marking schemes, recent 4. But you need to learn a lot from marking schemes on a daily basis from tomorrow. Day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5 will be guiding you individual marking schemes in a more productive manner, and will be guiding you about how to write an answer in a more productive manner. So is maintaining a file going good for all of you? Exam technique articles, examiner reports, suggested answers, and marking schemes. Is it really helping you? Before I come to the last thing, just one quick scan before I take a break for 10 minutes to start on with the last phase of maintaining this file and reducing the gap between examiner and student. When you're going through the marking scheme, utmost important to know the marking scheme, because a lot of times students have no idea of the marking scheme. How many marks you get when you write one business risk? Students have no idea. How many marks will you get when you write one procedure? Students have no idea. How many right marks will you get when you write one ethical issue, one professional issue? Students have no idea. So you should know the marking scheme, and I'll be guiding you upon that in my sessions from tomorrow for every area, that what is an ideal marking scheme you should stick to. It help you in writing an effective answer and complete answer in stipulated time, because if you're unaware of the marking scheme, you might be writing a lot or perhaps might be writing less. It is so much important. It is so much illustrated and exactly tells your limits as a student in exam. If you get a question on 20 marks for risk, and there, if it is a business risk question, right, on 20 marks, now every business risk is worth 2. So okay, 20 divided by 2, I need to write 10 business risk rather than 20 business risk. If you get a question on ROMM, risk of material misstatement, for 20 marks, now we know in ROMM there are two marking schemes, 3 and 2. Certain ROMM are worth 3, certain ROMM are worth 2. So you cannot just divide the 20 with 3 or 20 with 2, because some of them are with 3, some of them are with 2, right? So we'll be solving uh, specific questions under marking schemes from tomorrow, right? Day 2. The marking scheme contain pointers which can give you marks. That was just I was illustrating to you. You can reconcile your points with marking scheme points. So if the points of yours reconcile with the points of the examiner, that's really good. Even if 50% or more matches, that's great. Examining team do suggest credit will be awarded for additional points. So even if your point is not in the marking scheme, examiner do suggest that if you have a valid point and that valid point has been justified, you will still get credit for that, right? So this is just a summary of key aspects of the marking scheme. There are typical marking schemes in AAA paper. Ideally, either the AAA paper has a one mark, 2 marks, or 3 marks. Most of the marking scheme in AAA is either 1, 2, or 3. So you will get to know more about that in my sessions from tomorrow, which areas gives you 1, 2, 3, because each of the area which I will be practicing with you, you will get to know the marking scheme. So eventually you can consolidate the marking scheme at least over the next 4 days, or you can consolidate the marking scheme looking at my previous practice to pass webinars. Okay, before I start with the final set, which is read the mind of the marking team, which is the final document which you should be knowing and which you should be downloading and publishing in your file. I'm just taking a break for 10 minutes. Post break, I will not just be exploring the last document, which is about reading the mind of the marking team and what is the importance of this article and why you should download this and put this into your file. I'll be looking at some journal misconceptions of student and something about time management, which is very, very important when you're setting a strategy for your March 2020 exams. So there is a lot more to be explored in the remaining 45 minutes, which will idealize your strategy. So don't miss the last 45 minutes because it will build up a strategy which will really give you a good track to start practicing from tomorrow, right? So, and you can join my AAA Facebook page for predictions for what can come in March 2020 exams, because that's again a frequently asked question: what is predicted, what can come, what cannot come. My AAA Facebook page, which is AAA by KK, you go on Facebook and write AAA by KK, you will reach my page. You can like my page and you follow that page for lots of updates. Okay, just taking a break again. And resuming back from break, I'll be doing the last part analysis of my day 1, which was about reading the mind of examiner. Now, just before I go to the break, can I have your quick feedback on the session so far? If you can drop in your feedbacks about how exploring this first 2 hours had been, or how insightful these first 2 hours had been, or what insights have you gained from the first 2 hours? Particularly those appearing for the first attempt in March. Has this session been good so far? Helpful? Have given you something in terms of opening your mindset about how you should be preparing uh, for your exams in March 2020? Okay, keep dropping your feedback during this break about the session today. I'm just taking a break for 10 minutes. It's a break, and it's ideally a break for approximately 10 to 12 minutes. And I'll be resuming back at 8:10 8:10 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time. And in the last 50 minutes, I'll be exploring the final strategy you should be having for your exams in AAA. Okay, have a break, relax yourself, fresh yourself, drop in your feedback about the session today, and I'll meet you back live after 10 to 12 minutes. Hello and assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to the day one and the final session of the day one, where we are focusing on read the mind of the AAA examiner. Now, so far over the day, I have focused on looking into the paper format. Beside the paper format, I have focused on the expectation gap, which needs to be reduced between the student and the examiner. And over the last 2 hours, I have been exploring the reduction. How can we reduce this gap by the supports available by the examining team? And I was exploring each and every possible support and how important that support is for students to make use of. Uh, we have looked into exam technique articles as a support and how important that is with the do's and don'ts analysis with the green pen and the red pen. The examiner reports again with the green pen and the red pen and the do's and don'ts analysis. The suggested answers and different misunderstandings around suggested answers, not just looking at the suggested answer for the length of the answer, but more about the development of the point. And again, I will be drilling my own answers from tomorrow onwards over the next 4 days. So you will get a better perspective of how you can write a better answer, because there was a query in between the break even from one of the student asking for that we are capable of identifying a point, but we normally fail to develop a point. Yes, but that is an area of concern which is to be addressed from day 2 to day 5, where I need to assure that you learn to develop a point, because the practice which will start from tomorrow will really help you to develop a point, because that is not just a problem for student based in Pakistan, but it's a global problem for students giving the AAA paper, that they're capable of identifying a point, but they then fail to develop the point to such an extent which can give them good number of marks. We were looking at the marking schemes, and again, the marking scheme is an area which we'll keep exploring over the next 4 days. There are so many areas in AAA which give us 1 mark, so many areas which give us 2, so many areas which give us 3. And I'll be making a consolidated marking scheme wherever I get time for that. The final document, read the mind of the marker. Now, when you're maintaining a file, you've already put 4 things in your file prior to the break. You now need to put the 5th document in your file, which is just one document, which is known as read the mind of the marker, the AAA marker. Now, if I take you to that point where we have the document known as read the mind of marker. Now, this is a document. Again, the hyperlink of the document is given under my slide. You can explore this hyperlink and reach the document, or again on the Google you can type read the mind of AAA marker and you will reach the document. The very first link you will get on Google will be about read the mind of AAA marker. So on the Google, type read the mind of the AAA marker. Now this is a very important document which is published by ACCA examining team. I think this is not a very recent document. It's almost like now a 1-year-old document, which gives you a deep insights into how you should gain marks per valid point, and which points will score 0.5 marks, and which of the points will give you full 1 mark. What the marker has done in this article, I'll just be showing you that the examiner has given 2 examples of students, and he has explored that how a student gets 1 mark, 0 marks, or 0.5 marks. If you write this way, you will get 1 mark, or if you write that way, you will get 0. So examiner has explored a lot of examples of students' answer, and to guide you, okay, if you write this 0, if you write this 1. So that's quite an exploring article. And what I have done basically is, because that read the mind of the marking team, this article has covered 2 areas. One is ethics and one is reporting. So when I do my day 5 on reporting, so I will connect this document because in the read the mind of the marker, the reporting area, the marker has covered a question on critical appraisal of the audit report. And critical appraisal of the audit report is very important for March 2020 exams. So I will be doing a question on critical appraisal on day 5. And along with the critical appraisal question on day 5, I will be exploring the read the mind of the marker, that where where you will get 1 mark for the appraisal and where you will get 0 marks for the appraisal. So I'll try to connect this article in more depth in the day 5. And ethics is obviously my day 3 agenda. So when I do a question on day 3, so I'll connect this document on day 3 as well. But this is an important document which gives you an idea about the marker, because eventually your paper has to be checked by the marker. So will your marker be giving you 1 mark or 0 marks? It is better to know it, because if you're not reading the mind of your marker and you're doing the same mistake and you come out of the exam hall expecting I'll get 1 for this, and you look at the marker document later and the marker said if you write this way you will not get 1, you will get 0. So see how much stress you will be having. So is it better to look at this document before entering the exam hall rather than doing the same mistake in the exam hall, which can eventually give you 0 rather than 1? So this is a very important article, right, which you should all be exploring. And I'll be exploring it more on my day 3 and on day 5. Explore this article at least once before you sit down to practice. You will really find this beneficial and will add value. This document has solved 2 exam questions from 2018 exams as illustrative, so guide you on the marking scheme. So examiner has done 2 illustrative questions from the 2018 exams and then guide you about how you can gain marks on. So you can follow this document and be capable of knowing where to score full, where to score half. And just to give you an idea of this document, again, if you go on Google, and on the Google you type read the mind of AAA marker, enter the very first link, click it, and you will reach a PDF document, and a PDF document which is right in front of your screen, which says embracing change, shaping future, advanced audit and assurance, read the mind of the AAA marker. This document, download it, and this document covers 2 questions. One is the question 3, which they have solved. And you can see they've given observations here. They've given observations on the requirement, that what was the requirement of the question, what student misunderstood, or what should have been done. And then they've given candidate 1 answer, candidate 2 answer. That this is how one student solved it, this is how the second student solved it. And then they've given you the marks, which students score higher marks. So they've given you analysis of 2 students, which can help you judge which sort of a student you are, and can even help you overcome your mistakes. So if the candidate 1 score more marks than the 2, then 1 is the better candidate and you should become the candidate number 1. Or if the candidate 2 scored the better marks, then you should become the candidate 2. So is that clear to all of you? So there is an analysis of a candidate 1 versus a candidate 2. So whichever is better, you should become that. So examiner is guiding you. This is a candidate 1 answer. This is a candidate 2 answer. And he has solved the question number 3. Then the same he has done for the question number 5. He has taken the observations of the requirement, that what was asked for, and then has given you the candidate 1 answer and the candidate 2 answer. So I'll be exploring this 3 in my day of ethics, and I'll be exploring this 5 in my day of reporting. So this article will come back on the respective days, day 3 and day 5. Will you be downloading this article and going through it? But the better utilization of this article will come on day 3 and day 5. If you can just see your quick drop of messages with some responses like yes or no. Is everyone clear on this document? Will you be downloading it? Have you got to know where and how will you search this document? And do you find benefit of this document? Candidate 1 answer, candidate 2 answer. So you need to choose which type of candidate you want to be in exam paper, the one which score more marks. So this is a wonderful marker document which has been released by the ACCA on their website. Okay, that's wonderful. We're moving back towards the presentation. So if I take you back to the presentation, so we were just going through the reading the mind of the marker, right? Now your file is ready. So everyone has a file ready in the next 24 hours. And in the file, you know what should you be putting, right? And if you're putting something in the file, you know what you need to do. So is everyone prepared, done, ready for the file? And what are you putting in the file and why? You cannot put a useless paper in the file, which is of no use, right? You need to put the useful paper, and I've just informed you the usefulness of each and every paper you will be putting in your file, right? Okay, now towards the last 30 minutes, crucial, a broader analysis of some very important things which will really help you to practice with me tomorrow. So you know tomorrow is a very important day. We are meeting for writing an answer on risk of material misstatement, which is potential for March 2020 exams. And you will be amazed to know what blunder students do when they write an answer on risk of material misstatement. But for tomorrow, we need to make a strategy today. So this is the strategy which will really be helpful for you when we start the practice phase tomorrow. Top 5 reasons for students failing the triple exam. Number 1, and this has been carefully investigated over my years of experience interacting with students, why students keep failing this particular exam. Number 1, improper time spent. I'll be giving you a clue of that. Failing to understand, not adapting, improper point development, and incomplete paper. Improper time spent, spending more time on one question, spending less time on another. How many times students do that? There are so many students who are struggling with AAA, 5 attempts, 6 attempts, 7 attempts, but they're still not getting the message that till the time you have an improper time spent on planning and writing, you are giving less time to planning and more time to writing, you will fail. You should have an ideal time for planning and an ideal time for writing, and I'll just be illustrating that. I even illustrated that in my previous webinar. Failing to understand the requirement. You don't understand the requirement. You don't understand what the requirement is asking for. And again, I will be illustrating that in the remaining 30 minutes. Not adapting. You don't adapt. This is the concern we were looking for in the March 2019 report I was looking for in the session today, that you just directly apply the bookish knowledge. You don't adapt towards the case study. If there is a case study on risk, you cannot just go with rote learning that I'll just rote learn the risk. Like a lot of students rote learn the risk, journal risk, like listed company, the first year audit. And the moment they see the word first year audit, they develop the first year audit into risk. The moment they see the word listed company, they develop that listed company into risk. So that is rote learning. You need to see what is happening in context of a listed company in the case study, or what is happening in the context of the first year audit in the case study. I will make you realize that tomorrow in my question on risk of material misstatement. But the problem with student community or the student fraternity is that they're not adapting themselves. They have become so rigid, they become so rote learned that they just keep applying the bookish knowledge to the AAA exam paper and then expect the examiner to pass you. Not at all. Improper point development. We were just discussing that prior to the break. Developing a point, how you develop a point. Every point needs to be developed. If you're writing a risk, how will you develop your answer on risk? If you're writing ethics, how will you develop your answer on ethics? If you're writing a procedure, how will you develop your point on procedure? So it is very, very important to understand the development of a point, ideal length of a point. What is the quality? What is the quality of a good point? This is all what you will be getting through right in the next 4 days, starting from tomorrow. And improper time spent failing to read, failing to understand, not adapting, improper point development. This all leads to incomplete paper. How many times student comes out of the exam hall with 15% paper left, 20% paper left? Miracles can happen, but not every time. You leave 15% paper, you can still pass, but that is a miracle. You cannot just rely on miracles and think about I'll be successful. You need to come out of the exam hall with 100% paper. You might be an excellent student if you even leave 15% paper, 20% paper, and you still pass. That means the remaining paper you did was good, but that cannot happen with all of you. So you have to complete 100% paper. Is that clear to all of you? These top 5 reasons of failing, I will be exploring them with risk tomorrow, with procedures on day 3, with ethics on day 4, and with reporting on day 5. Is that set and ready for all of you? Improper time spent. I've given this equation to my students in my last webinar, those of you who are repeating it. This is a very simple equation, very common sense equation. When you go to the exam hall, you have 195 minutes. That is 180 minutes of the writing time ideally, and 15 minutes of reading and planning. So your total time in the exam hall you have is 195 minutes. Is that true? If I can get your quick answers. Is that true? You have 195 minutes in the exam hall? Right. And is that a limiting factor? Is that a limiting factor, 195 minutes? Everything you have to do in 195 minutes. Now, if that is a limiting factor, what you can do? You have a limiting factor and you have an objective. You have to do 3 questions. You have to do 3 questions in 195 minutes. Your invigilator will not give you extra time, will not give you bonus time. So how would you do it? I have a very simple equation, which I am very affirm on since last many sessions now, that out of the 195 minutes, 1/4 of the time is reading and planning. So 195 minutes, 1/4 of the time is reading and planning. How much is that? 48 minutes, 49 minutes. 49 minutes should be spent on reading and planning of the 100 marks paper. And then how much time you have for writing? 3/4 time. 3/4 time you have for writing, which is approximately 146 minutes. Without a proper planning, you cannot write. Planning leads to a proper answer, and a lack of planning leads to an improper answer. That is a very simple equation, right? Planning can do wonders. And if you have no plannings, failure. Try to realize the importance of planning. Tomorrow, when I'll do a question, I'll utilize 1/4 of the time in planning, and I'll utilize 3/4 of the time in writing to give you a message that it is possible. So every question you do in the exam hall, how much time are you spending on planning in every question? In every question, how much time are you spending on planning? If you can give me answers to that. In every question, how much time you're spending on planning? 1/4 of the time, right? And in writing, now I've broken down. See the right side. When you are doing the question number one, in a question number one, you should have 24 minutes to read and plan, and you should have 74 minutes to write. Can you see that? Question number one. So how much time you have to plan and write, plan and read the question number one? 24 minutes maximum. If you've done before that, good. How much maximum time you need to write? 74. Question number two, how much time you have to read and plan? 12. Question number three, how much time you have to read and plan? 12. How much plan you have to write? 36, 36. So I've given you three question analysis here. So 24 minutes, you're done with the reading and planning of the first question, and 74 minutes, you write it. Question number two, 12 minutes, you're done with the reading and planning, 36 minutes, you write it. Question number three, 12 minutes, you're done with the reading and planning, and 36 minutes, you write it. So that is the simplest formula, and I'll be applying this formula from tomorrow. I'll be asking you at the start of my session tomorrow, 1/4, 3/4. And every question we will do, we will first take the time, we'll divide the time with 4, and 1/4 of the time will go on planning, 3/4 will go on writing. Is that clear to all of you? And whichever question you are practicing at home, you will take 1/4 of the time in reading and planning, 3/4 in writing, right? Okay, failing to understand the requirement. How you plan a requirement in a triple exam paper. From tomorrow, you will get to know that. How important is to read the requirement carefully? How important is to break the requirement? So many times there is a word and in a requirement. So many times there is a comma. There is a comma in the requirement, and you overlook the comma. You overlook the and. So you're not breaking the requirement. You cannot just read the requirement like a sentence. You need to stop. You need to take a pause, comma, and I'll be demonstrating that tomorrow, how you read the requirement, how you break the requirement. Understand the marking plan, number of points to write. How much is the requirement worth? Is it 10 marks requirement? Is it a 15 marks requirement? How many points should I be writing? If I don't know the marking scheme, I might be writing a lot. Allocate time to each requirement. 1/4 time in reading and planning, 3/4 time in writing. Connect the requirement to the case, because that is success. Any of you who connects the requirement to the case study will pass the AAA paper. And if you fail to connect the requirement with the case study, rather you start writing a journal answer, you will fail. Annotate an effective answer to write. Annotate. When you're reading and planning, annotate it. You know annotations, right? When you're reading the case study, you keep annotating the case study, like scribbling, underlining, circling. So your case study should look messy. Your case study should have circles, underlining, scribblings, as if you've read the case study. Annotate the case study, because the more annotation you do of the case study, you will absorb the case study. And once you absorb the case study will get to your answer. But if your case study is neat and clean, your case study has not been messed up, you are not writing a good answer. So do you understand the importance of annotating the case study? The more, the better. So the more scribbling you do on the case study, the more underlining you do on the case study, the more circling you do on the case study, you're absorbing it. And the more you absorb, the better. So this is all what I will be doing tomorrow, right? Because I'll be doing a question tomorrow. So I will be doing the application of reading the requirement. I will be doing application of planning. I will be doing application of writing. So the top 5 reasons why students fail, you will see the application of that starting from tomorrow. Is that clear to all of you? Not adapting. Adaptation is the key success. You should tailor your answer, absorb the case, That is exactly what I was discussing in the preceding slide. Annotate the case study, absorb the case study so that you can tailor the answer according to the case study. You should absorb it. You should absorb it. You cannot write generic stuff. Avoid generic stuff. Avoid definitions, avoid introductions, avoid giving bookish knowledge. If you're attempting a question on ethics, you cannot just start to write the code of conduct. If you're attempting a question on ethics, you cannot just start to tell examiner there are 5 threats to ethics and you start giving definition of self-review, self-interest, familiarity, advocacy, intimidation. You're wasting your time. You need to connect the threat to the case study and justify why it is a threat. If you're attempting a question on audit risk, you're not telling examiner that audit risk, the definition. You're not telling examiner audit risk has 3 components. No, you're directly applying audit risk to a case study. I hope you're getting my message of avoiding the generic stuff which a lot of students do in the exam paper. You're doing a strategic level paper. So not adapting. And I'll be demonstrating tomorrow what not adapting basically means. Improper point development. I hope through the session today you got some focus on point development. From where can you learn point development? From the examiner answer. How to develop a point? Examiner answer. Read the mind of the marker. How to develop a point. And from tomorrow onwards, when we go into the practice phase, I will be developing points in the session, in the live session. I will be developing points for risk. I will be developing points for ethics, so on and so forth. So sessions from tomorrow onwards will be very important for you because what am I discussing today? You will see the application. You will see the realization of that from tomorrow. Because a lot of students, when they see the application of something, learns a lot. So improper point development and how important contribution improper point development plays in success and failure of the student. I'll be guiding all of you on that from tomorrow. Incomplete paper, so many issues. Obviously, if you're not reading properly, you're not planning properly, you're not writing properly, you're writing more, you're writing a lot, your point is a big point, and obviously you will not complete the paper. So lots of factors have to come together if I want to complete the paper. Incomplete paper depends upon so many factors, not one. So we need to find solutions of completing papers by writing concise answers, complete answers, avoiding long answers. Because if you have a habit of writing a long answer, then you're not completing your paper. You need to complete your paper. You need to come out of the strategy of writing long answers. A lot of students have a capacity of writing very, very long answers. They're happy with it. But that happiness is not completing your paper. Okay, finally, some journal misconceptions and frequently asked questions which student keeps raising in every webinar and beyond webinars. So I thought let's bring them together. So everything is done on the day one. So tomorrow when I start practicing, you will not be asking these questions to me. Order of the question, frequently asked question. Should I do question number 1 first, 2, 3? No, you just got this answer in the session today. Do it in the order you like it. If you want to start with question 3 first, start with question 3 first. You want to start with question 2 first, start with question 2 first. Examiner herself is telling you do it in the March 19 examiner report. And your examiner is saying whichever student did that has scored better. So can you start with your strongest question first? If I get your answers? Can you start with your strongest question first? If you can just quickly drop your answers. Okay, and should we do questions in order? Should we do questions in order? No, should we do questions in order like 1, 2, 3? Not necessarily, right? Not necessarily. So it's up to you. If you think your question number one is the strongest, start with question number one. But if you think my question number two is the strongest, then start with the question number two. But the very important thing comes here. Can you read this third bullet? Don't break the order of the requirement when writing the briefing note. Suppose you're doing the question number one and your A requirement is weak, your B requirement is strong, and you're writing a briefing note and you do the B requirement first and you do the A requirement after. You know the logical order in the briefing note is worth 1 mark. So when you are attempting the question one, and in the question one you have several parts A, B, C, D, try to maintain the order. Because if you break the order in the question number one, you will lose 1 professional mark. Is that clear to all of you? When you are doing question number one, within the question number one, maintain the order A, B, C, D. Is that clear to all of you? Because if you break the order in the question number one, you will lose 1 professional mark. But can you start with question two first? Can you start with question three first and do question one after? Is that clear? Can you do question two and three first and one after? Yes. But when you are attempting the question number one, will you maintain the order of A, B, C, D? Right? Because if you don't maintain the order of A, B, C, D in the question number one, you will lose 1 professional mark in the briefing note. So that's one question. Two, quoting standards, name and reference. So many students ask, should we give name of the standard? Should we give reference of the standard? There is no credit, there is no mark for the name and reference of the standard, whichever the standard is. Then you ask, why do examiner writes it? Examiner answer is a tutorial guidance. He's guiding you. He's giving you guidance that this has come from the ISA 450 or this has come from IFRS 2. But you are not expected to write as per IFRS 2 or as per ISA 450 or as per the IESBA code of conduct. Examiner has given that in the technique article, exam technique article part 3, that there is no marks for quoting the reference and the name of the standards. This is given in black and white. Is that misconception clear to all of you? There is no credit, there is no mark name for the name and reference of the standard. The examiner answer do give the name and reference as it is a tutorial guidance, so don't get confused with it. Is that clear? Is that a frequently asked question of the student fraternity, quoting standards? Do you agree with that? Giving definitions. No need, as you are a manager throughout the paper and responding to a partner. Should I give definitions? Not at all. Why? Because I am a manager. You are a manager. So manager is responding to a partner. You should not give definitions. Avoid unnecessary definitions unless specifically asked for. So no need as you're a manager throughout the paper, right? And responding to the partner. Avoid unnecessary definition unless specifically asked for. Unless and until the examiner asks you define the term professional skepticism, then obviously you have to define. But if the examiner is not asking you, then don't define a term unless and until the examiner asks you to define it. There has been a past paper which asks you define the term professional skepticism. Then obviously you have to define it. So unless and until examiner is not asking you, please refrain from writing definitions. Try to understand who you are in the paper. You are a manager in the paper. Try to realize the role, try to realize the importance of your position you have in the AAA paper. I hope that's clear. Professional marks, question number 1. You know, question number 1 has 4 professional marks. An examiner has made it clear so many times in the March 19 report, in the September 19 report, which you have to download and read. Examiner has made it so clear how you get the 4 marks. Examiner has shown you the breakdown of the 4 marks. Examiner says you will get 1 mark for the suitable heading. I will be demonstrating that tomorrow. Examiner says you get 1 mark for an introduction, 1 mark for the structure of the answer, and 1 mark for the clarity. So examiner is saying if you want to score 4 marks, first you should have a suitable heading, then you should have an introduction, then you should have a structure, then you should have a clarity, right? And I'll be demonstrating a briefing note tomorrow. Heading, introduction, structure, clarity. Heading, introduction, structure, clarity. It's better to learn this way. HISC. Heading, introduction, structure, clarity. What does each of them means? I will be demonstrating them tomorrow. Heading, introduction, structure, clarity is equal to a briefing note is equal to 4 marks. Is equal to a briefing note is equal to 4 marks. Yes, conclusion is part of the structure, right? The briefing note has to end with a conclusion. Conclusion is part of the structure. So structure includes conclusion. Is that HISC clear to all of you? Heading, introduction, structure, clarity. So briefing note has 4 marks. Don't lose these 4 marks. They can be crucial in your passing and failing of the paper. Amount of practice you should be doing for March 2020 exams. Another frequently asked question. 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019. That's like 8 exam papers. So if you do these 8 exam papers, you're wonderfully prepared. So download the 16 exams, download the 17 exams, download the 18 exams, download the 19 exams. Do it. These 8 papers is quality. If you really want to be good in the AAA, don't do very old papers. Do recent papers. Right. I'll be writing the briefing note tomorrow, right? So if you have any specific questions relating to briefing notes, that will be addressed tomorrow. But is that amount of practice clear to all of you? The paper format was changed from September 18. That does not means that you only practice questions from September 18. That was only the change of the format. But at least 16, 17, 18, 19 are recent papers. Recent papers as of risk, ethics, evidence, reporting. We know September 16, the reporting format changed. So if you do questions on reporting prior to September 16, you might confuse yourself. So it is better to do the reporting questions from September 16 onwards. Yes, these are enough, right? 8 questions. And if you're still not satisfied, then do 2015. Every person has a different level of satisfaction. If you're not satisfied after 4, do 2015, do 2014. But what should be your first priority? Your first priority has to be 16, 17, 18, 19. Is that clear to all of you? Your first priority is 16, 17, 18, 19. And if you think I still need to do more, then 2015, 2014. Articles which do tell you about the activities at the pre-engagement stage, planning stage, and the completion stage. At the start of my webinar today, I was guiding you that there is an article of examiner which guides you on the planning stage, which guides you on the completion stage, and which guides you at the stage of accepting a new client. What if you get a question on accepting a new client and you've not read the examiner article? What if you get a question on a completion stage and you don't know what happens at the stage of completion? Has examiner written articles on the stages of the audit? Yes. Examiner has written an article on a pre-engagement stage, which is accepting a new client. How you accept a new client. The hyperlink of the article is given here. Planning stage. What you do at the stage of planning? What if the examiner asks you, what are fundamental activities at the stage of planning? Or explain the planning activities in relation to the ABC company, and you're unaware. So please assure that you've read the article of examiner on the pre-engagement stage, how you accept a new client by clicking the hyperlink. Planning stage, and we know both of these can come in the question number 1. Yes, June and December, there are 4 exam sessions, right? But do you think ACC uploads exam paper of each session? Do you get exam paper of March, June, September, December? I think you've not seen the website of ACCA. ACCA hybrid the paper, right? March and June is hybrid and one paper. Then September and December is hybrid and one paper. So ACCA still make the consolidation of papers. ACCA don't publish paper for March, June, September, December, even though there are 4 exam sittings. ACCA only make 2 exam paper available, June and December. And then there is an article on completion stage. 3 articles on completion stage, which will give you so much idea about the completion stage of the audit. So please assure that if you want to be good in the question number 1, you have an idea about the pre-engagement stage and you have an idea about the planning stage. And if you want to be good in the question number 2, then you should have an idea about all the 3 articles, because these 3 articles will help you better understand the question number 2. So will you be reading these 5 articles? And how many technique articles I have recommended you in the session today? How many technique articles to download and read? 5. And how many articles am I recommending you now for pre-engagement stage, for planning stage, and for completion stage? Okay, so how many total articles you're reading from the day 1 then? Let's see who is mentally present. In total, how many articles to read from the day 1? Total of 10. 5 technique articles and 5 articles right in front of your screen. So these are 10 articles to be read from the very first day. Hyperlinks are given. Just click them, explore them. Okay, now just one housekeeping instruction quickly as we are into the last 5 minutes. When the webinar ends after 5 minutes, immediately you will see a feedback form in front of your screen. Please assure you fill in the feedback form very properly and very clearly. The feedback form will have a rating scale, ideally from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. Please assure that you know 1 and 10, which is good, which is excellent, to mark your feedback in a very proper manner. So once the session ends in 5 minutes, automatically in front of your screen, you will see the feedback form, and please fill in the feedback form in a very clear manner. And also please start to drop your feedback about the session today. How much helpful had the session been today for all of you, particularly those of you who are taking this webinar for the very first time and is appearing for the AAA exams for the first time in March 2020. Your valuable feedback in the next 5 minutes will be very highly recommended. Okay, so that's bringing us to the conclusive stage. At the start of the webinar, I have shown you that you can explore the previous webinars on the ACCA Vimeo channel. The hyperlinks of them has been given here. You can explore the December 19 webinar. You can explore the September 19 webinar. You can explore the June 19 webinar, and you can explore the March 19 webinar. And you're already taking the March 2020 webinar. So if you explore these webinars along with this live webinar, this can really be setting the right platform for you to pass the AAA paper. Right, so this is the previous sessions I've done. And again, just a reminder, I try making every webinar different. And if you watch my previous webinars, in each of the webinar, you will get some different learnings, some different things, because I cannot just be monotonous in my webinars that I keep repeating the same things, because I've been conducting these webinars since March 2018, and this March 2020 webinar is completing my 2 years of webinars. So I cannot just be the same. I need to give you more things in each webinar. So each webinar gives you more insights of the AAA paper, and you have plenty of previous webinars to explore and be good in. Okay, just a final recap for the first day. So when you conclude today, you have a better understanding of what has been the focal point of my first day today. The first day explored on reading the mind of the examiner. And over the 3 hours, I've explored that with all of you, guiding you about how important is that. Have you really got the message, which is the day one message, which is this: reducing the gap between the examining team and students? Has this session really helped you getting some understanding about reductions? And do you believe this reduction is bringing you closer to 50 and surpassing 50? Will this really help you coming to 50 and surpassing 50? So have all of you got the clear message of reduction? And do you believe there is an expectation gap between you and the examiner? Do you all realize that? But you still have a month, right? You still have a month to reduce it. That's a lot of time. That's a lot of time in which this reduction is possible. Honestly, 1 month is a very good time to prepare yourself for AAA. If you make a plan, make a file, sit down, uh, make a file as is being given to you in the session today, and then start practicing. Now, you know, from tomorrow onwards, I'll be meeting you with very specific agendas, right? Tomorrow, on the day two, I'll be practicing the question on risk of material misstatement because it's very important for March 2020 exams. So tomorrow we have day two, and the day two is on the risk of material misstatement, right? Day three is on procedures and evidence. Day four is on ethical and professional issues, which is right in front of your screen now. And day five is on reporting. So mark the calendar and please be in the live webinar because we have such an important topic tomorrow, risk of material misstatement. And I'll be taking into account the June 19 exam paper, question number 1, if you want to prepare that. And that I will do the complete June 19 question number 1 with you tomorrow. And with all the reading and planning time, with all the development of the point, with all the do's and don'ts, so that you have an excellent idea about how you can tackle the first question. So be in time tomorrow, 6 to 9 p.m. the Pakistan Standard Time, so you can check the local times over the Google, and but make a habit of joining these sessions live so that you get a lot from the live sessions, right? So it's time to say you goodbye from the first day. Again, I wish you best of luck towards your preparation for exams in March 2020. It was good having you all live today, and I'll be seeing you live tomorrow for the day two of the Advanced Audit and Assurance Practice to Pass webinar, which is being organized by ACCA Pakistan. I am Kashif Kamran signing off from the first day. Goodbye and Allah Hafiz.